tell people I don't like LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn and it changed my life. My tip for people that are just starting out is start small, take little steps, 15 minutes a day on the tool to build connections, and start with your circle of friends, professors, neighbors, maybe people you go to church with or volunteer with, people that you feel somewhat comfortable with initially, saying, hey, would you connect with me? There's always something out there that you can share. There's someone in the same boat as you, right? And so everybody has a special, unique gift. And when they speak authentically from their heart, you'd be surprised how many people out there might pick that up and it could change their life. You already have the no before you even ask the question. Right. So what do you have to lose? Nothing. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. Okay, that's right where we started, but you have a 50% chance that they will say yes. And with that yes opens up a whole series of opportunities. So why not? Just go for it. It's okay to slow down networking, but never stop. I love my career. I'm so grateful every day to the universe for my job. But you know what? Every day I network, because you never know.
Hi, Zandy. It's not exactly a newsflash that building relationships is important for your career, right? I mean, it's important in so many ways, but when it comes to taking the time to network or, let's say, build your LinkedIn presence, it can just feel like we don't have the time, or it can feel intimidating, or frankly, we just don't even know what to do. Back in episode 258, we talked with Kari Mirabal about her book, You Already Have the No. Carrie is an acclaimed international keynote speaker, TEDx presenter, author, and consultant who specializes in cutting-edge networking strategies that empower you and me to harness our true potential of genuine connections. And here's my take on that. Now more than ever, we need genuine connection. Not just followers or social media friends, rather a true connection with others. And why? I found over the years that genuine connection with others can unlock potential and opportunities in ways we might never imagine. So, since we're navigating a time of great disruption, I wanted to bring Carrie back on the People and Projects podcast to discuss the intersection between job transitions and relationship building. Are you new in your career and don't know where to start? Or in between jobs and wondering what's the best way to land the next role? Or maybe you have a job currently, but you've got concerns about how secure it is with all the disruption going on. Well, today's discussion with Carrie has something for each of us. Can't wait to share it with you. Hey, quick note. If you or someone you know is thinking about getting PMP certified, we put together a super helpful guide called The 5 Best Resources to Help You Pass the PMP on Your First Try. We've helped thousands of people earn their certification. We'd love to help you too. It's totally free, and it's a great way to get a head start. Just go to 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com to grab your copy. Again, that's 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Let's make this the year you get your PMP. Let's jump into today's discussion with Carrie. Hey, Carrie, welcome back to the People and Projects podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to come back and share even more information with you and your audience.
Been looking forward to this. You're such an effective voice for networking, Carrie. I mean, I know I asked you this back when we first had you on the show years ago, but in case people haven't heard that discussion yet, which I really recommend people go back and listen to that, you're so good at this. People might think you were just born a good networker. That just comes naturally. So would you tell us about that?
Sure. And that is absolutely not true. I am one of those people that hated networking. Hated it.
Yeah.
And I just remember feeling so awkward. And back then, I was telling myself lies, right? The voice in my head, oh, you sound desperate. You look stupid. No one is going to want to talk to you. You don't have anything to share. All of those things, those negative thoughts in my head, they caused me to have what I call an orange heel, a barrier, right? So I always ask my audiences, what is your orange heel, right? What's the thing holding you back? And for me, it was mindset. And I realized that in my career, networking was a tool, and I was going to have to either stay stagnant or figure something out. So luckily, I had some awesome mentors that were willing to be patient with me. And I had to really embrace the idea that you've probably heard what you resist will persist, right? So
Right.
the more I feared it, the more I knew I had to do it. So I just went out there and I applied practice and patience and perseverance. And over time, I started getting some wins. And with each win, my confidence started to grow. And I made a lot of mistakes in the process. That's just
Sure.
par for the course. But I went out there, and when things started happening for me through my network, I started to get really excited and the momentum grew. And now I teach people how to network smarter, especially the people who felt like I did, where they
Mm.
hated that awkwardness. And now I'm teaching people how to approach it differently. That building relationships is not about just collecting business cards, right? And you want to be a contribution to the people in your network. And once I kind of got past that shift of sales is not synonymous with networking, but service is, it changed everything for me.
I love that because I don't know if I've met many people in life who say, "I love going to networking meetings," or "I love doing this." But it's, sometimes people write books on things that are easy for them, and this is your journey, right? And so,
Yeah.
and it's been a life's journey in so many different ways. And I
Yes.
mentioned at the opening of the show, there's specific groups of people that I really wanted to focus on this episode. And one of those, perhaps, is the person who's just new in their career, and they see people on LinkedIn and they look at, they've got hundreds, maybe even thousands of connections, and they feel like they're staring up a mountain that
Yeah.
just can't be climbed. So first, I'm interested, is LinkedIn still worth the investment, do you think, to build the network there? And if so, what are some tips that you'd share with people who feel like they're just starting from scratch?
Absolutely. I tell people I don't like LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, and it changed my life.
Uh,
So, yes, I still believe LinkedIn is the number one social media site for professional networking. So, definitely want to encourage everyone to explore it. In fact, I am now being called in at the high school level to teach high schoolers how to create a profile. You have to be
Interesting.
14 to be on LinkedIn. Both of
Mm,
my kids have been on LinkedIn since they were 14, which sounds crazy, but we can talk about that a little bit later about how that has benefited them.
mm,
But my tip for people that are just starting out is start small, take little steps, 15 minutes a day on the tool to build connections, and start with your circle of friends, professors, neighbors, maybe people you go to church with or volunteer with, people that you feel somewhat comfortable with initially saying, "Hey, would you connect with me?" And I think it's important for people to realize that, it's about engagement on LinkedIn, not broadcasting. So the idea of creating a LinkedIn profile is not enough. You want to then put some nitrous in the engine so it'll go faster, further for you. And that means doing things like commenting on things in your network that people are sharing, you yourself sharing information. And I work with college students a lot that are preparing to graduate and enter the workforce. And
yeah.
then I also work with seasoned professionals that haven't had to look for a job in 20 years. I'm a former IT recruiter. And so a lot of my foundation comes from helping countless people find employment across the country. So I tell people on LinkedIn, it's this amazing thing, but it can be overwhelming, right? I teach it at university and we do a whole semester. So your
Mm,
audience is getting like
that's
30
great.
minutes here, right? So it's a high level view. But when
Yeah.
it comes to LinkedIn, really think about content that you can share that creates value. And I know with young people, they say, well, what do I have to share with the world, right? I don't have any
Mm,
experience yet. And I say, that's a great topic. Maybe create a blog, my career transition journey, or how college prepared me for my career, or, the nerves of my first interview, or anything like
mm,
that, because there's always something out there that you can share. There's someone in the same boat as you, right?
yeah.
And so everybody has a special, unique gift. And when they speak authentically from their heart, you'd be surprised how many people out there might pick that up and it could change their life. So on LinkedIn, you want to be human. I know that sounds weird, but a lot of people are very robotic when they're out there. Speak
Yeah.
in first person. Be authentic and be bold. Go for the ask, right? That's my
Mhm.
motto. So
Right.
that's where I would start with people, is just kind of creating that business habit of logging in and spending 15 minutes a day. Today, I'm going to connect with 3 new people. Today, I'm going to like and engage and comment on my network's information. Today, I'm going to post something. Today, I'm going to write a blog. So pick something small, and each day it'll start to grow and grow to a manageable process in your daily routine.
Yeah, that's good. I heard somebody say once, be a stalker, liker, commenter, poster. Yeah, you
Engage.
start just by looking and then you like, that's not so risky, right?
You're
And
right.
then a brief comment. And I guess, what I'm amazed at on LinkedIn is just how accessible people. I
Yes.
mean, you want to interact with the author of a book, or
Yes.
like you heard Carrie speak somewhere, you reach out and you're very active, right? You respond to people. It's
Yes, yes. You have
there's
to.
a-
It's engagement, it's an opportunity to connect with people. I have met celebrities, authors, sports figures. I mean, I have met people I never even dreamed that I could meet, celebrity chefs. I mean, like amazing people that if you just have a little bit of courage and you ask, like, would you be willing to? Hey, what are the chances that we could jump on a quick call? I had 2 questions for you. Would you help me? Sure, some people are like, no, they're on the number one social media site for networking, but guess what? They don't want to network, which is like,
right.
so when people get a little funny with my clients, I do a lot of coaching on networking. Sometimes they'll say, I don't want to be bothered. Why are you reaching out to me? Da da da. And I say to them, here's the best answer. Give me 5 minutes. I'll teach you how to deactivate your account, and no one will ever bother you ever again. And they never want to do that because they want the benefits of networking, but they
Right.
don't want to be the contribution. And in my world, networking is about developing mutually beneficial relationships. So you learn quickly who to invest your time with and who not to. But you'd be surprised in my experience and my clients, you'd be surprised how many people are willing to do an act of kindness if you just ask in a way that's respectful and intentional, and you set like time limit, like, hey, could we have 15 minutes, that type of thing. You'd be surprised.
Well, if I've learned anything from you, it is whenever you find yourself saying, "Oh, they'll just say no," you already have the no, right? If it's the name of
Hmm.
your book, and if you are all about just go for the ask, right?
Yes.
So how could that apply to someone who's new in their career to benefit by going for the ask, and perhaps use one of your favorite college students, your son, about
uh,
how he applied mom's teaching you?
I love this because the way I've always taught networking is you already have the no before you even ask the question.
Right.
So what do you have to lose? Nothing. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. Okay, that's right where we started, but you have a 50% chance that they will say yes. And with that yes opens up a whole series of opportunities. So why not? Just go for it. So I absolutely love that. And again, if your ask is with respect, with a spirit of curiosity, with confidence, hey, I noticed you have 10 years of experience in this field. I really want to be you when I grow up. Would you answer 2 or 3 questions if I emailed you, or could we jump on a quick Zoom call? You're someone that I'm hoping will mentor me, maybe, and I can learn from you. So, taking that time to really kind of do your research, measure twice, cut once, when you reach out to somebody, it also makes a big difference in creating authentic connections, especially with people that you don't have an existing relationship with. Um, as far as my kids go, I joke that while your kid's first word was milk or mommy, my kids were networking. And,
Right.
I've taken my kids to networking events since they were wee bitty, suit them
Mm.
up, teach them how to shake a hand, eye contact, and ask open-ended questions. That's just being a Mirabal child in our family, right? And so, I remember my youngest son, he used to, get upset when he was, in trouble or whatever, and he would say, "Mom's making us network again." Because I would make them go to these conferences or whatever when I spoke,
Right.
and so but now they're 24 and 21, and they're applying these things, and guess what? The older my kids get, the smarter their mom gets, right?
Amazing how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, so both of my kids actually, one is in the IT industry and the other one is a college student, and he is interning with an orthopedics company, and so both of them received those jobs through networking, through their work on LinkedIn. True, true, true.
Yeah.
And, they always say, Mom, we can always tell when you do a podcast or a master class or a keynote because we get this influx of invites on LinkedIn asking us, like, is that for real? Did your mom really do that? Yes, I did. Do you want me to share one of my stories with you
I'd
about?
love it. I'd
Okay.
love it, please.
I
Yeah.
have so many, it's hard to pick. So my youngest son and I were eating lunch, and a contact of mine happened to walk in who was in the orthopedic sales, like medical device field. And my son had expressed a little bit of interest in kind of getting in the healthcare, but he wasn't sure which direction he wanted to go. And so I said, "Oh, here's someone that I know. Let me introduce you." And he said, "Mom," he was so intimidated. "Mom, I don't know anything. This is like a seasoned salesperson. I don't know anything. What am I going to say to this guy?" And again, coachable moment,
Yeah.
if I'm your mom. And we're standing back, and I said, "You may not have a lot in common with him, but look who's with him." And it was that day that he had his son with him who was in a baseball uniform.
Oh,
Now, my son played baseball for the number one team in Oklahoma. So we're big baseball. And I said, "You have something in common with his son." So, like my coaching says, find that commonality. So I introduced him, and he says to my contact son, "Hey, tell me, are you playing baseball this year? What's your plan? What position do you play?" Just ice breaking, right, with that
sure.
commonality. And they ended up talking about that he was going to try out for the high school team. Well, my son won state that year. And so he said, "Hey, if you want some tips or anything, I'm happy to help you." And of course, this catches the attention of the father, right?
Sure.
And then my son said, "By the way, my mom said you're in orthopedics. Would you tell me a little bit about that? I'm interested in that." So they had a small conversation. We exchanged numbers. And that chance introduction led to my son offering some coaching tips for the tryout. And in turn, when an internship opened at that company, my son asked him, "Would you give me some pointers for the interview?" So, long story short, and celebration, my son has been interning at that company for 3 years. So, bravo to chance meetings, going for the ask, and finding commonality. And I tell this to young people all the time. You don't have to be intimidated when you're in a room or a space with someone who's got 20 years of experience in a field that you don't know anything about yet. But maybe there's something, maybe, like in this case, the commonality was baseball, and that kind of started the conversation. Or maybe it's a t-shirt with a rock group on it that you can talk about, or a favorite, football team, or just anything that's common can start the conversation. And then that can kind of slowly lead into going for the ask.
Yeah.
And again, for us, we're hoping that when he graduates college next year, he will interview and hopefully go into the sales program. And one day, my son will pay that kindness to someone else at a restaurant who randomly, So it's just kind
Yeah.
of interesting how networking is like going on an adventure. And
Yeah.
if you look at it that way, and in my son's case, he was so intimidated, and I get it because a lot of my clients feel the same way. It's like, just go for it. And I also want to mention something here that, a lot of times people think it's a weakness to be so nervous and all that,
Mm.
but I turn it into a strength. So if you're in a situation like that, "Excuse me, I'm really nervous. I want to introduce myself to you, and I had a few questions, so bear with me. Okay, I'm a little shaky this morning." Most people will go, "It's okay.
Uh,
What's your question?" So if
yeah.
you kind of lean into that versus like trying to, what you resist persists, right? It can become a strength of yours actually, because vulnerability is a lot of times how we connect with other humans in the networking space.
I love that. So many things about that story I just love. And I know that's just one because I've known you long enough of
Yep.
thousands that you could share
Yes.
that and what I love about that is I think sometimes people think networking is this smarmy thing you're doing to get
Mm-mm.
something. And as it turns out, you're giving, right? And as it turns out, it does come back to you in that regard, but it's one of those things that would you say service, you're
Service.
giving, it really is a win-win. It truly is end up being win-win if we have the courage and when we show the courage of doing it. Yeah.
And the curiosity to figure out,
Hmm.
like, what can I, a 19-year-old kid, have in common with this person? What can I do? I'm gonna get curious about going for the ask, right? And I think that's
Hmm.
the courage that we need. 10 seconds of courage, right? Take a big breath and then go for it and see
Yeah,
where it takes you.
that's it. Well, let's go further into career. Let's say someone's in between jobs and as they consider what they want to do next, they think maybe it's time to go into a different industry or maybe a different role. And I think that might be a good thing to do. But sometimes hiring managers have trouble connecting the dots between that's what you were doing and that's what you want to do now. And they have trouble seeing that that's possible. So, what advice do you have for someone who's in transition that might make, they might want to make a jump like that?
Absolutely. And that's such a great question. I work with back when my recruiting days, it was always interesting to me that sometimes it wasn't the person who
Mm,
was most qualified that got the job. It was the person who marketed themselves the best that
mm,
often got the job. So nowadays, it's, having that LinkedIn presence, which really kind of brings you to life. A lot of my clients are working on doing videos and explaining a little bit about their story so that hiring authorities can see that energy and that passion.
yeah.
And I think it's important for career seekers to, I call it the me file. You want to have like a file cabinet full of stories and examples of things that have happened to you in your life. And it's just for your eyes only. It's like a database that you can go to where you can create narratives that you will use in your networking and in your job interviewing, where someone might say, okay, what are your top transferable skills, right? And you want to be able to show examples of what you've done, how you did it, and what were the results of that effort to a company, right? Like,
Yeah.
how did you create value? So, an example might be, I was a server in a steakhouse when I was young. And that experience taught me multitasking, customer service, working under pressure. And definitely that was my introduction to EQ. So even being able to tell how that experience translates to the work I do now is important. And it's not the hiring authority's job to put that together, it's
Yeah.
yours.
Mm.
So in your LinkedIn profile, in your about section, you can tell a little bit about the story. I have a client, I have a wonderful client that came to one of my master classes and he said, I'm a technical writer, but I really want to be a comedian. And I was like, wow, that's okay. And he's like, what do I do kind of thing. And so we told the story on his LinkedIn profile, like, by day I'm a technical writer and I write about robotics and things are a little bit dry. But by night I am a comedian and my passion is this and I want to bring a little bit more enthusiasm and excitement to the technical writing world, right? So it was really kind of fun to be able to tie in that concept of being able to do 2 things, but if you don't tell the story, it kind of
Uh,
it gets discombobulated, right? So, same thing on the resume, you can put in the objective section, what you're looking to do and why. Passionate about this or that. And a lot of times when I was recruiting, it wasn't sometimes someone didn't have all the qualifications, but they were so passionate about wanting to learn and
yeah.
grow. And I would work with clients all the time and I'd say, gosh, you may pay them a little bit less salary because they don't have this and this, but boy, you can't buy motivation, right? You
Mm,
either have it or you don't, you have that drive. So I think it's important for people to really have the what, how, results narratives that they can pull depending on the job they're interviewing for. And those are examples of how they use their top transferable skill and how it's relevant today. And then I think telling that story on the LinkedIn profile, as well as maybe doing a 30-second video where you're introducing yourself to hopefully targeted hiring authorities. And the other thing too, that's important when you're networking and you're marketing yourself because you're the brand, come up with a nice tagline. I don't like the sales elevator pitch thing. Like I stay away from that. But a nice tagline that shares what your goals are when you meet people. So for example, I have a client that's a lawyer and his tagline is I help companies prevent legal disasters.
that's
Right?
good.
Mine is I teach people how to network smarter. I have my older son he works in software development. So he says, I develop software that helps end users work more efficiently. So when you have a little tagline, Nike, just do it, right?
Yeah.
It helps with the introduction. It helps you tell the story of what your intention is. And those tools can be very, very helpful for career seekers. And if you're already in a career and you're just networking, to introduce yourself with clarity.
What percent of jobs are landed now because of who you know,
Ugh,
because of connections? Because I've seen all kinds of different numbers.
I don't, I think. I don't have a specific number today, but the last study I read, I think it was over 75% of
Yeah.
jobs are found through who you know and what they're willing to do for you. So we
Yeah.
call that the unpublished job market.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible how opportunities can come through people you know. And a lot of times companies like that because they don't have to go through the process of paying for a job posting, going through hundreds and hundreds of resumes. I always say, like people. So if you're looking for someone that knows cybersecurity, chances are they hang out with other people that are in cybersecurity. So
Yeah.
asking for
Yeah.
referrals and really leaning into that. So one of the strategies with career seekers is I always say, know what you want. Sit down and create a list of like two or three companies that interest you and why. Go and research people that are doing the job that you really want. Reach out to them, connect with them, ask them questions. What do you
Yeah.
wish you knew before
Mm,
you came to work for this
it's
company?
good.
Give me some tips. And then kind of leverage that information to start the process even before you're applying for the job. Because the chances are, if you can get your resume into that person's hand and they're willing to take it to their manager, that can speed the process along quite a bit. And don't forget mutually beneficial relationships. So I tell people don't forget to ask that person, does your company have an internal referral program?
Uh,
Because if that person gets the job and you get $5,000 because you referred them, it's a win win.
for
So don't
sure.
be shy about offering that to people that are willing to help you with that step. So it's
Yeah. I love
mutually
it. I know somebody who just went from like a media role within a church and wanted to go into the corporate world. And sometimes people think, well, these are just different worlds. And it was because of a referral from a friend, and they had a referral program. So it was win-win. And the
yeah.
company would much rather hire somebody who's known than some random resume or something like that. So,
Exactly. And it's top transferable skills.
mhm.
Think about all the skills that are out there that are transferable no matter what industry, no matter what title.
Yeah.
And this sounds, it's a doggy dog world out there, right? So, what
Mhm.
I tell my clients is oftentimes it boils down to how are you going to create value within those companies? How are you going to help them make money? How are you going to help them save money?
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to convey that information. In my previous employer, I helped drive sales by 25% because I'm very good at LinkedIn and I can
Mhm.
manipulate that information to research potential clients to create a warm lead instead of a cold lead.
Yeah.
So, like having those kinds of numbers and examples will help employers want to hear that.
Yeah, I love it. A lot of people listening to us that have jobs, but it's so disruptive these days that they do worry
Right.
a little about what happens if they were being told their jobs eliminated. Maybe it was automation, AI, restructuring, whatever it is. What are some preemptive actions that you recommend people take to help mitigate worries like that?
Absolutely. And that's a good point. In my Naked networking keynote, Naked is an acronym and it's five mistakes people make and the solutions to go with it. And the number one in of Naked is neglect, which is what we're talking about. So a
Yeah.
lot of times people will neglect to network until they need it. And by then it's almost like we're spinning, we're scared. How are we going to make our mortgage next month? And we're like in a spirit of scarcity, and that's never good.
Yeah.
So I tell people it's okay to slow down networking, but never stop. So I've been a consultant for over 20 years. I love, love, love my career. I'm so grateful every day to the universe for my job. But you know what? Every day I network because you never know, right?
Right. For sure. For
And
sure. Yeah.
a lot of people have the misconception that LinkedIn is just for people that need a job. That
Yeah.
is so far from the truth. It's a networking platform at its core. And yes, people use it to find jobs, but for the most part, it's about building and sustaining a network so that when, the time to fix the roof is not when it's raining, right? So change is inevitable. The only constant is change, right? And so we want to make sure that we have our tools ready to go, our narratives, our taglines, or tell me about yourself statements. Keep your LinkedIn profile updated, stay active, keep building that network so that when you get ready or you find yourself in a position where you've lost your job, you can go on LinkedIn and do a post. Hey, I'm on the market. If you know a company or if you'd like to
Yeah.
introduce me to someone, I'm looking to get into aerospace or whatever. you have like thousands of people that are already in your corner that are showing up for you because you've been consistently showing up for them. And your network is just, it's such a valuable asset. So you have to remember that people who are consistently showing up are often the people that will help you land on your feet when you get in those situations. So don't take it for granted.
I think that neglect is such a real thing, Carrie.
Oh yeah.
If I hear from somebody that I haven't heard from 10 years for 10 years, I almost always know what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to help them, but I think it'd be so much easier if they would have stayed in touch, or if I would have stayed in touch for that matter. So
Yep.
avoid the N. I know the A, just because I know your material, is
Yeah.
the afraid. And whether we realize it or not, I think a lot of it comes down to fear of why we don't do
Mm,
some of that. So why is it that we're scared, Carrie? And how do you personally push through that? Because yeah, I know even though you've lived this for so long, there's times
yeah.
where you don't feel confident. So how do you do it?
Absolutely. So everybody has different, reasons for fear. In my experience, coaching clients and doing keynotes and interacting with audiences, I believe a lot of it has to do with rejection. People are afraid to get rejected. And that is something that, people will tell me in our coaching sessions. And I say, it's par for the course. I'm a great networker. Every day I wake up and say, okay, universe, who can I bless today? Put them in my path and I will help them. And every day I think about how can I be of service to someone, right? So I kind of start my day off like that. But even though I am paying it forward and I have a spirit of kindness and I help random people, there are people who don't network with me. Like I'll send a network connection and they won't respond, or I'll
Sure.
do what I'm asking my clients to do and they won't reciprocate. And so what I've learned over the years is you really just want to pour your energy into the people who are willing to do reciprocity. We all know fair weather friends, right? So for me, in facing fear, and I face fear every day, whether it's personal or professional, one of the things I talk about in my book is the LTR format, and it stands for lie, truth, and reframe. And what it means is when you're triggered, stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling? And oftentimes it's, I'm just scared. I'm feeling small. I'm feeling intimidated, or I'm nervous. So bringing that feeling up and out can kind of help us look at it. And then we have to ask ourselves, what is the lie that I'm saying in that moment? And earlier I talked about, not liking networking because I didn't know what to say and I felt awkward and
Hmm.
that. So, for example, a lie might be asking for a meeting is too bold. I can't do it. Well, that's a lie because the truth, which is the next step, is it's just a question. Let them decide if it's too much. And oftentimes it's that voice in our head that's programmed us to think like, don't ask for things. It's a sign of weakness. But asking is a sign of strength, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, then the third step is recontextualizing, which is huge. How can you look at the situation from a different perspective? And my perspective on that scenario would be if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
So go ahead and go into it knowing that you have a 50-50 chance that they will help you, or whatever the outcome could be. And those are pretty good odds, right? So like anything, confidence is a skill. And, like networking, it gets stronger with practice and with
Yeah.
time. So we just got to face those fears one day at a time and know that oftentimes failure has been my biggest teacher,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of
I
people learn and grow from that.
I have far more regrets of when I didn't make the ask, and
Mm.
once I just learned your simple idea there, we already have to know that significantly changed things. And I feel like salespeople get a lot of this training, Carrie, but
Yeah.
non-salespeople don't. But I mentioned that once to a sales manager, and he goes, "You're right," but he goes, "I can't tell you the number of salespeople I try to hire who don't ask for the sale in the job interview, so to
Oh,
speak. They don't
wow.
say." And so, what do you think about that idea during a job interview at the end to say, "Is there anything that would keep you from extending an offer today, based on what you
Absolutely.
heard?"
Go for the
Yeah,
ask.
go for the ask, right? And yet, I
Yeah.
think that's something we don't normally think of during an interview, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times with interviews, I did my TED talk on career dating, and it was not how to date people you work with because that's a
Right,
no-no.
yeah.
It was dating and career transition. Actually, they have a lot in common. So if you think
Mm,
about the first job interview, it's a lot like the first date. We're nervous. We don't want to come across too desperate. We want to be confident but not cocky. We want to show our value. So there's a lot of things in common, and And what's interesting is a lot of people go into an interview like an interrogation. They have all the power. I'm just there to get questions. And the truth is, you want to go into an interview like communication,
Mm,
right? And you don't want to drive it because you're not the hiring manager, but you want to ask questions and you want it to be conversational because you are there to see if this is like, do we want to go on a second date? Do we want to keep
yeah.
going in this process, or is the culture not a fit for me, or whatever? And you're not going to know if you don't ask questions. And I do think it's important at the end to say, you know, while I am interviewing with several companies in the healthcare field, you are my top pick. And I
Mm,
really, really want this job. And I hope we will be able to work together soon. So kind of showing that
yeah.
energy and passion while also saying, I have some other options too, right? And again,
Hmm.
like Beyonce put a ring on it, right? So when you're out there, don't be afraid to, ask those questions. And yes, to your point, share your intention and why you're excited about the opportunity.
I like that because the sales manager's role might be proposing on the first date, you know, but doing your angle on it, actually, I think that sounds even a bit better. But I'm curious because AI has just fundamentally touched so many different areas.
Yep.
Have you seen AI impacting relationship building and job seeking by chance?
It's interesting. A lot of people will say to me in my coaching, AI is going to take over my job and I'm scared. And, I'll admit that AI is changing how we research, how we filter, and how we apply for career opportunities, but it can't replace human connection. So human relationships will drive the best opportunities, hands down. So use AI to work smarter, but don't forget that like a well-timed conversation can do so much more for you than an algorithm,
Yeah.
right? So don't be so intimidated. Use it as a tool. And I think a lot of people are using it to help benefit their career transitions for sure.
Yeah, review resumes, give feedback on a resume. I've
Research
seen some.
companies. Yep.
Right, right. I've seen some services where you can practice interview with
Oh
the
yeah.
AI, which
Yep, LinkedIn
it-
has that. You
yeah,
can record your answers and it'll give you a number back like 87% of the people that, we're polling say the same, your answer was this or that. And so it's a tool, right? But if we lean too much on it,
mhm,
it can not be good, right? So just
yeah,
remember human connection. It's sad to me. I go out and I see people like at restaurants on their phones, and just, and like again, going into high school, going into college environments, I'm telling people like, what's old is new again, right? Like relationships are always going to be important, but if you don't know how to
yeah.
look someone in the eye, shake their hand, have a conversation. It's like a lot of the younger folks are so reliant on their technology that they're missing some of the social cues that can really hurt them professionally. So I'm on a mission to create a movement of people who go back to the basics, which is human interaction and connection. I'm teaching people how to build relationships essentially.
Yeah, yeah, and you're doing that around the world, but you also did it as a mom. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. Let's end with that because we have so many parents that
Oh
listen to
my
the podcast.
goodness.
I know just because I've known you over the years that you've instilled so many of these ideas into your parenting. So, can you think of anything else that you'd suggest that parents could consider to help their
Yeah,
kids be more confident in building relationships and going for the ask?
absolutely. It's interesting. The number one feedback I will give parents is let them do the work. When I was recruiting, how many times did the phone ring? And it was a parent saying, my son wants, is interested in your job. And I'm like, have your son call me. Like
Right.
this idea, we cannot enable our kids. Our kids have to go out and they have to learn this stuff and they have to do it. But there are things that parents can do to help support them, not enable them. And so one of those things would, I tell my kids, if you want to have a friend, you have to be one first. So encouraging the dialogue that when you go out and you meet people, it's okay to be the one to extend your hand, eye contact, maintain open-ended questions so that you can have a conversation with someone. Um, Preparation leads to confidence. So I think it's great for parents to do like mock interviews or like, hey, you just met me. Um, my kids used to roll their eyes all the time because I
Right.
come around the corner, I'd be like, why do you want this? Like it was,
Yeah, yeah.
imagine if I'm your mom, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
that preparation helps them prepare so that we're reinforcing the message that networking is not about being perfect, right? It's
Mhm.
about going for the ask, taking a risk, and getting curious about who you meet and how that relationship might change your life. And also giving kids permission to fail, I think is important, because failure, again, it's been my best teacher, and also my kids. And I've always said, when they go out and they're interviewing or they're networking, like, oh, mom, I sounded this or I didn't say this right. And I say, that's okay. What did you learn from the experience? Um, you got to let go of shame. You've got to embrace the possibilities. And, when it comes to new introductions, just take a breath and see where it might go. Every person that you meet was once a stranger,
Mm, yeah.
and so you just got to start somewhere. So parents can really reinforce those basic principles. And of course, I love working with a lot of parents will contact me. Oh, my son or daughter is graduating next month. Can you put them through your career coaching program? And I'm sitting here like, absolutely. However, we needed to start that a long time ago before, oh, they're graduating next month. And so are 20,000 other college students, and their
Mhm.
competition is fierce. So we want to start networking at a younger age. Um, I can't do naked networking at schools because, can't get the parents to sign off on that permission.
Right,
But
right.
I am teaching young people how to make friends, is what we call it, and essentially what we're doing is we're teaching these concepts at a younger and younger age so that they enter our workforce and they feel equipped to be able to do these basic things. So don't wait until it's too late,
Yeah,
start now.
yeah. What's the line? The best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now, right? So
Right.
even if they missed it, now's a good time. If let's say someone's like, man, I really love what Carrie's saying here. They want to get in touch with you, or maybe bring you in as a speaker, maybe learn more about your coaching or your master class. What's the best way to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn anytime, Kari Mirabal. Also, my website has a lot of information. You can Google just my name in quotes, Kari Mirabal, and my TED Talk will come up, my book, and all the assets and videos and things like that. So, probably LinkedIn would probably be the best way to reach me.
Yeah. Well, for those
Yeah.
listening, I invite you to connect with Carrie on LinkedIn and follow her on social media. Many of the ideas we talked about today are in her book, You Already Have the Know, which I recommend you check out. I put links to that book and Carrie's website and her LinkedIn profile in the show notes for this cast. So, hey, Carrie, thank you for joining us again on the People
Yeah.
and Projects podcast.
Love it. Thanks.
Special thanks to Carrie for joining us here on episode 465 of the People and Projects podcast. I enjoy my interactions with Carrie. We interact on LinkedIn and just between episodes in lots of different ways. I just have a lot of respect for her as a person and how she goes about her business. You know, from this discussion, how many times did you hear her say, go for the ask? In our advanced project management class, we have about 2 hours on influencing skills. And then we have a section for about a half hour or so on negotiating. But we include content from Carrie on that because this simple idea of you already have the no. So if you make the ask and they say no, well, you already have the no. It's such a simple idea. It's the essence of her book. And I think it applies in so many different ways. Job seeking for sure, networking for sure. I'm telling you, go for the ask. Use that as some motivation to try and ask in the next week. When you might be tempted to say, no, they're just going to say no. Try it. Do you remember when she talked about LTR as a way of reframing? A mentor told me once his line was name the lie, insert the truth. And LTR from Carrie was lie, truth, and then reframe it. So what is the lie? What is the lie? I think we're held back by so many lies. I could never make that ask. They'll just say no. I'm not capable of this. I'm telling you, there's so many situations where we have these invisible fences that we put up that get in the way. And so the LTR, what's the lie? Insert the truth and then reframe it. Try to reframe it. I think that's such a valuable skill in so many different ways. And then you heard Carrie say it. She said it slightly different, but the way I've often heard it is you have to build the well before you're thirsty. Right? You have to build the well before you're thirsty. And so a lot of this networking stuff, it can feel so intimidating, like, oh, I'll never build a network that's that big or whatever. You don't have to. You just chip away at it. Remember what Carrie said? 15 minutes a day. And just even if you just spend time just finding people in the industry that you're in or that you want to move to, what do they post about? Starting to eventually comment on it or asking questions on what they post. There's so many ways that you can just build the well before you're thirsty, before you, need that relationship because of a job change or something like that. So take Carrie's teaching to heart on that. I'd love to hear what you take away from today's discussion. You can reach me at show@peopleandprojectspodcast.com. I hear from listeners almost every day. And so, I'll get back to you. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like more on this topic, I put links in the show notes to episode 285, which is my earlier conversation with Carrie. Make sure to check that out. Episode 318 with John Stepper. And it's a great follow-up to today's discussion. He talks about how you build new connections and a better career. It's a very insightful discussion with a guy I've really grown to respect as well. Then episode 356, it's less about on the job side, but just about relationships overall. Eric and I, we talked about everything we know about relationships is mostly wrong. It's a really fun discussion with entertaining writer, really insightful guy. So check out episode 356. You can check the show notes for links to those episodes. A quick reminder that if you or you know somebody who's considering PMP certification, make sure to check out our free guide, The 5 Best Resources to Help You Pass the PMP on your first try. You'll find that at 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com. And hey, can I ask you a favor? Would you leave a review for the People and Projects podcast? It could be on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to them. Just a couple minutes makes a big difference. And just for me, for sure, but also for our team, when we see those, it just makes a big difference. So if you could take the time to do that, it would be so appreciated. There's so many podcasts you could be listening to. It is an honor for us to put these together. Thank you for listening.